Let me tell you a very brief story about our next presenter. My colleague, Christine Harper, is writing a book who's going to be out early next year on this man, and I met her just the other day in the hallway, and she lit up when she talked about how wonderful a time she was having listening to all of his stories about his time in the Federal Reserve, in the Treasury, and of course, tackling regulation in the aftermath of the financial crisis. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honour that we ask to come to the podium former Fed chairman and author of that particular rule, Mr. Paul Volcker.
Thank you, Bonnie. Christine is writing most of the memoir, but I'm training her. But look, ladies and gentlemen, this is indeed we need an elongated microphone. This is a special evening for members and guests of the Foreign Policy Association, but most especially for me. I happen to have known Bill Rhodes for some 35 years. Some of you may have been out of high school by that time. Not only have I known him for 35 years, I'm not a druggie, but I've become dependent upon him. Let me paint the picture. Here I am, 1982, chairman of the august Federal Reserve System. A first-class international banking crisis is brewing. Not only brewing, it was overflowing. Virtually every one of our big banks, American, European, Japanese, were head over heels in loans to Latin American countries who unfortunately couldn't pay their debts. To give you the picture, the collective loans to Latin American countries by these banks was almost double their capital. So it was a question, who would go bankrupt first, the borrowers or the countries? What to do? Well, on the official side, some of us put our heads together. With the help of the IMF, we have a plan. First thing you need is a plan. But how do you execute the plan? We needed the cooperation of the banks themselves to implement the plan. But who among the banks could work with us day by day to organize the effort? Who could pull off the trifecta? Who could understand the banks? Who could understand Latin America? And who could understand that this is a matter of public priority? Well, one Bill Rhodes was strongly recommended. I learned his whole career had been with Citibank in Latin America, right in the center of the crisis. That was useful, but I have to tell you, I was more than a little suspicious. Decades ago, my old boss at Chase Manhattan, George Champion, used to gripe over and over again that Citibank took too many risks in Latin America. Too many naive, untried young bankers were sent there. He turned out to be right. At first blush, it seemed to me Bill Rhodes certainly fit that pattern. But I soon discovered that Bill was more than a callow, untried commercial banker. He truly understood what was at stake. It was not just a risk, an enormous risk for the private banks. It was a huge risk for the international economy. But at my request, he went to work as a principal liaison man among the Federal Reserve, the IMF, and the special committee established by the banks. Now, I'm not going to go into detail, but I have to tell you that in the space of 3 or 4 years, there were a series of bank restructurings put in place. I'll recite it in alphabetical order. Argentina, Brazil, Jamaica, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Peru, Uruguay, and Venezuela. 9 countries, enough to make a baseball team. I know all that because it's in Bill's resume. But my question is, what happened to Chile, Costa Rica, and Paraguay? How did they escape? Now, I think it's fair to say that in those few years, Bill Rhodes' reputation was made a savior of Latin America, at least for a while. And a few years later, at a really critical point of the Asian monetary crisis, which you may recall, the United States felt it necessary to call upon Bill to get back and work and add Korea to his list of successful restructurings. It helped save the day. He did it. Now, Bill's written a book, Banker to the World, Leadership Lessons from the Front Lines of Global Finance. Now, I can't complain, can't say that that title is a masterpiece of modesty. But I would like to extend the number of his readers, and I do recommend it to you, because his basic concerns are clear. His principal preoccupation these days is to support and reinforce stronger cultural standards in banking. He's seen the good and he's seen the bad, and he knows that responsibility begins at the top. Now, I'm well aware that over the past 35 years, Bill rose high in the ranks of Citibank. That at times presented challenges of its own. But he's involved in more than finance, involved in philanthropy, more international committees and societies that I know exist, and there are more New York cultural institutions than I can begin to list. But I would like to think that the very acme of his career is that some time ago he joined alongside me in private offices in Rockefeller Center. So far as I know, I am not in financial crisis, but it's great to have Bill around. Now, Bill, as a longtime member of the Foreign Policy Association, please rise and accept this special 100-year award that reflects the appreciation of all of us over what you've achieved over many decades in public and private affairs, and for me in personal friendship. I do have one word of reservation. The walls of our offices are already loaded down with Rhodes Awards and mementos. I'll be damned if I give up any more of my space. For you to hang another prestigious award, how well deserved. Please come up here and